Hi, welcome to our YouTube-friendly version of NTD News. What you'll see here is only the content that YouTube allows. For our complete, uncensored broadcast, head on over to ntd.com, and you can click on the link below. See you there. Former President Trump is facing a total of 91 charges after a fourth indictment in Georgia. He and others who questioned the 2020 election in Georgia are accused of being involved in a criminal enterprise. So, what's Trump's next move? NTD's Melina Weisskopf is outside the Fulton County Courthouse with details. Melina, what can you tell us?
So there are a couple of avenues that Trump's defense team could take here. They could claim the First Amendment, saying that the president's challenging the election results is within his rights because it's protected by free speech. That's one avenue they could take. They could try to move this case to federal court, saying that since Trump was in the White House during these actions, that he's protected, and they could move this to federal court. And then another avenue that they could take is try to use yesterday's incident where the court actually briefly posted the charges online before the grand jury voted. They could use this as a way to dismiss the indictment, saying that there's prosecutorial misconduct. So these are all the avenues they could take, and there are a lot more, of course, because, of course, they always use legal strategies to try to defend their people as best as they can. Now, who will be making all of these decisions on these strategies that the defense team will be bringing forth? That will be a new judge by the name of Scott McGaffey. He's only been a judge since 6 months ago, and Brian Kemp, the governor, just appointed him. Now he's facing this very complex list of indictments, these broad charges, 41 charges, 19 people are being indicted. Trump says it's all just to interfere with his political campaign for the White House. Here's how Trump has since responded to these indictments.
They know they can't beat me in a fair fight at the ballot box, so they're weaponizing the legal system to try and defeat me. And you know what? This is the greatest political movement of all time. It's going to make America great again. There's never been a movement like it, and they're not going to let it happen.
And Trump is responding to this by holding a press conference on Monday in New Jersey, just detailing his investigation into what he calls election fraud here in the state of Georgia.
So what's different about the Georgia case?
Well, as far as appearance, there are many differences. The sheriff here in Fulton County has said he does not plan to give Trump any special treatment, meaning that a mugshot could be taken if they don't make any prior arrangements with Secret Service to avoid this, as they did in those previous indictments. It also could be televised because of Georgia law, unless the judge tries to bar media from getting in. That is, if Trump is arraigned here in Georgia and it doesn't move to a federal court. But ultimately, we have no idea when Trump will be here in Georgia, if he'll come at all, and instead make a decision, try to, make a court decision from where, his home, have his attorneys come in and just do this separately. So we won't know if he'll come, but the DA has given them until Friday of next week to come and surrender to these charges.
Thanks for that update, Melina. We'll be checking in with you again soon as you continue to track this story for us in Georgia. And Georgia prosecutors also charged 18 more people besides former President Trump. Let's take a closer look at the other individuals involved in this case.
The Fulton County District Attorney says the 19 defendants all conspired to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Some notable defendants besides Trump are former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who worked as Trump's attorney, and Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, who allegedly advanced Trump's efforts to question his election loss in Georgia. Giuliani released a statement on Tuesday morning, calling the indictment the next chapter in a book of lies with the purpose of framing President Donald Trump and anyone willing to take on the ruling regime. Furthermore, prosecutors charged 6 lawyers, a former White House aide, 3 of 16 Georgia Republicans who signed a certificate stating that Trump had won the state, the former director of Black Voices for Trump, a pastor, a publicist, a bail bondsman, and the elections director in Coffee County. The 98-page indictment describes all 19 defendants as members of a criminal organization that operated in Georgia and other states.
And now that former President Trump has been indicted for the fourth time, how are the Georgia state charges different from the federal charges in the third indictment? NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards breaks down the differences.
Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis announced charges against Trump on Monday evening.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
Trump and others have been charged in connection with alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia. The former president has been charged with 13 of the 41 counts, including violating the state's Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, or RICO. RICO is most often used to tackle organized crime rings using intimidation tactics to gain money illegally. Overall, the indictment accuses all of the defendants of refusing to accept that Trump lost the 2020 presidential election to Democrat Joe Biden, and that they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. Collectively, the defendants have been characterized as a criminal enterprise that continuously carried out criminal activities for a common purpose. Some of the other charges against Trump include solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, and conspiracy to commit filing of false documents. Indictment number 3 similarly charges Trump with lies and conspiracies in connection with his actions after the 2020 election. Trump is charged with conspiring to defraud the U.S., obstructing an official proceeding, and conspiring against voters' rights. The federal indictment doesn't name any of the 6 co-conspirators listed in it, only Trump. Some say special counsel Jack Smith's strategy is to open the door for any of the co-conspirators to turn on Trump and testify against him. Both indictments focus on efforts to pressure state legislatures and the DOJ to change electoral votes by recruiting individuals to cast false electoral votes. Critics of the charge have argued that casting a second slate of electors is in furtherance of a legitimate challenge to the electoral votes. Willis and Smith describe these actions as criminal conspiracy. The Georgia prosecutor has more flexibility under the state RICO law than Smith would have if he used the same law on the federal level. The Georgia law requires less to prove a pattern of racketeering activity. Therefore, in Georgia, prosecutors can string together separate crimes committed by different people toward some common goal or purpose. Under federal law, the prosecutor must show that all of the people are connected to a criminal enterprise. And in order to prove a conspiracy, Smith has to prove there was an agreement between 2 or more people to commit an illegal act. In each case, Willis and Smith must prove their charges beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Trump's top contenders in the GOP primary reacting to the latest indictment in Georgia. That says the Biden administration tries to stay away from talking about Trump's legal battles. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Former President Trump is getting both support and criticism from his 2024 White House Republican contenders. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Tuesday condemned the legal strategy used to indict Trump and calling it an attempt to criminalize politics.
A RICO statute, which was really designed to be able to go after organized crime, not necessarily to go after political activity. And so I think it's an example of this criminalization of politics.
And conservative entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy offered to help Trump, and saying in a Monday tweet that he'd write an amicus brief to the court to show his support, saying prosecutors should not be deciding U.S. presidential elections. But not every Republican candidate is on Trump's side. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson on Tuesday again called for Trump to drop out of the race.
Donald Trump should withdraw from the race, and that case is only made stronger with every indictment and case that is brought against him.
And we're also seeing a split of opinions in Congress. Democratic leadership responded in a statement saying no one, not even the president, is above the law. But Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy wrote that justice should be blind, but Biden has weaponized government against its leading political opponent. And all this unfolds as the White House continues to try to stay away from directly commenting on Trump's legal issues. But it did say today that President Biden has spoken on several occasions about protecting the democracy. And Biden's also spoken about the need to maintain the independence of the Justice Department. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Now turning our attention back to Trump's classified documents case in Florida. The third co-defendant, Trump's property manager, has pleaded not guilty. Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira appeared in Florida federal court today for his arraignment. He pleaded not guilty to obstruction-related charges. De Oliveira also asked for a trial by jury. His attorney said the discovery process should get underway in the coming weeks. De Oliveira was added as a co-defendant in an updated indictment last month, which also specified new charges against Trump and his personal aide, Walt Nauta. Prosecutors accuse the three men of trying to delete security footage the Justice Department sought as part of its investigation. A trial is set for next May. A new development in the Hunter Biden probe. The president's son's lead attorney now asking to drop out of the case he's representing. Hunter Biden's criminal defense lawyer, Christopher Clark, filed a motion with a federal judge today saying that he could be called as a witness in future proceedings as the plea agreement would likely be contested. Special counsel David Weiss said in a new filing today that the plea deal is, quote, not in effect. Hunter Biden was expected to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges. In the proposed agreement, the plea would resolve a separate felony gun charge, sparing him possible jail time. But the case was soon stalled after a federal judge raised concerns about the details of the deal. Hunter Biden then entered a not guilty plea. Just last month, an FBI whistleblower testified before the House Oversight Committee behind closed door regarding the Hunter Biden investigation. The transcript testimony was released yesterday. The whistleblower said that President-elect Biden's 2020 transition team was tipped off about a planned FBI interview with his son, and that as a result, the interview never took place. And only a quarter of the burn area from the deadly wildfire in Hawaii has been searched. The death toll has risen to 99 on the island of Maui, and hundreds remain missing. Hawaiian Governor Josh Green told CNN the death toll could still double in the coming days. Most of the people found dead have been out in the open, in cars, or in the water in the hard-hit town of Lahaina. Authorities are expected to begin releasing the names of the dead today. As the community rebuilds, Hawaiian Electric has now restored power to about 80% of its customers on Maui. President Biden today said he spoke with the governor and lawmakers from Hawaii. He's laying out a support plan.
To date, FEMA has approved 50,000 meals, 75,000 liters of water, 500 beds, 10,000 blankets, and as well as other shelter supplies for survivors displaced from their homes. FEMA also authorized one-time payments of $700 per household to folks who have been displaced so they can do the immediate things of just taking care of medications and prescriptions that they so badly need.
The federal government will also work together with the state of Hawaii to provide temporary housing for people in need. Biden also said he ordered the Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Army to assist local rescue teams. He says he's going to travel to Hawaii as soon as he can. This is the first time Biden publicly commented on the fires. He was criticized for dodging questions on the issue just a day earlier. A small city in Minnesota has lost its entire police department after all members of the force resigned. Goodhue is located in the southeastern part of the state, and its population is just barely over 1,000. Mayor Ellen Anderson-Bach said that the resignation was due largely to the city's low salaries. Goodhue's current law enforcement will remain on duty until August 24th, and the city's police chief said that right now he can't find anyone who's willing to join the force. But Anderson-Bach reassured residents, saying that police coverage will not be an issue as the county's sheriff's office will patrol the city. Remember the 6-year-old Virginia boy who shot his first grade teacher? Now his mother is being held accountable. 26-year-old Deja Taylor was charged with felony child neglect back in April and pleaded guilty today. As part of a plea deal, prosecutors agreed to drop a misdemeanor count of recklessly storing a firearm so as to endanger a child, which could have put her behind bars for 6 years. According to the state's sentencing guidelines, the jail time for the neglect charge could be 6 months. The shooting incident occurred back in January, and as a result, the teacher was hospitalized for 2 weeks and has gone through multiple surgeries. And after the Illinois Supreme Court ruled to uphold the state's ban on certain firearms, Illinois citizens are speaking out, voicing strong opposition to the law.
We're always disappointed when the Illinois Supreme Court does not follow the Constitution as it's written, and they kind of go and make decisions on how they would like the Constitution to read instead of how it actually does read.
Sheriff Jeff Bullard from Illinois' Jefferson County is referring to the state's gun ban law. It requires owners of banned weapons to report to the Illinois State Police.
Our deputies won't be enforcing it because we know it violates the Second Amendment of the Constitution, and we have a duty to uphold our oath.
But the Illinois Supreme Court just voted to uphold the ban on Friday. The governor commended the decision in a written statement. This is a common-sense gun reform law to keep mass killing machines off of our streets and out of our schools, malls, parks, and places of worship. However, Sheriff Bullard disagrees, contending that banning firearms won't solve the complex problem of gun violence.
It's never the gun that kills people, it's the person holding it.
Additionally, attorney Brian Drew of Drew Law Group contends that this legislation won't curb gun violence, but violates citizens' rights. He cites Illinois Supreme Court Justice Mary Kay O'Brien, one of the 3 justices who dissented from the ruling.
The justice cited 60% of all crimes committed in Illinois with guns are with guns that were purchased outside of the state of Illinois. In addition to that, AR-15s aren't used in mass shootings here in Illinois. Unfortunately, mass shootings do happen, but many times they happen with other weapons, and it's by people who should not legally have the weapons to start with. And instead of cracking down on that and actually enforcing the laws we have, they chose to go after the constitutional rights of the people of the state who are law-abiding citizens.
Drew, representing a coalition of 5,000 plaintiffs, is challenging the gun ban law for violating the Illinois Constitution's 3-reading rule. This rule is designed to ensure public input in new laws. Drew asserts that lawmakers employed a gut-and-replace tactic, stripping a bill that was about insurance and inserting gun ban language instead.
Frankly, it's beneath government to do things like that. You shouldn't be using trickery and gamesmanship to pass laws that deal with the Constitution, and more importantly, this law.
Drew says the lawsuit is still in its discovery phase, collecting facts, but will eventually go to Illinois Supreme Court for a decision. Angela Moy, NTD News, Chicago.
Turning to international news, Russia launched overnight airstrikes throughout Ukraine. Russia says it hit military targets. However, Ukraine is reporting extensive damage to residential areas. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
Stop it, Jive! On Tuesday, the Russian Defense Ministry released footage of the Russian Navy boarding a cargo ship and questioning the crew.
Keep calm and listen to me!
The cargo ship bore the flag of Palau, an island nation in the Pacific. A Russian officer can be heard asking the crew why they did not respond to the Russian warship's request to stop the engine. And it appeared to be a miscommunication. Also on Tuesday, the Russian Defense Ministry said it launched overnight strikes on key military targets in Ukraine. But in Ukraine, the mayor of Lviv said those overnight strikes damaged 100 residential houses and also destroyed a kindergarten playground, injuring 4 people.
2 hours ago, this place was a children's pavilion of our kindergarten. A missile directly hit the pavilion, creating a crater that is 30 feet deep and 65 feet wide.
And those overnight strikes killed at least 3 people in Ukraine's northwestern city of Lutsk. An emergency crew was seen pulling a survivor out of the rubble. The Ukrainian city of Dnipro was also hit during the overnight strikes.
We were running to the basement when we heard the third explosion. There was a fourth explosion while we were sitting in the basement. It was very scary. I don't have words to describe my feelings.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Tuesday visited troops on the front lines who are fighting in the counteroffensive. Ukraine's counteroffensive seems to be moving slower than expected, in large part because of complex minefields. But Ukrainians are getting creative. They say the mines retain heat from the sun, and hooking a thermal camera that detects heat to a drone has helped locate some of those mines. And if that wasn't creative enough, volunteers have turned an excavator into a demining machine, and it can even be driven with a remote control. The United States recently announced it will be sending additional mine-clearing equipment to Ukraine as well. It's part of a new $200 million assistance package for Ukraine. Jason Perry, NTD News.
California's governor plans to promote educational freedom. He promises to allow parents to participate in children's learning and create a safe campus without political censorship. But critics point to existing bills that they say would infringe on parental rights.
Governor Gavin Newsom and first partner Jennifer Siebel Newsom announced California's family agenda on Monday aimed at promoting educational freedom.
We believe in children's right to thrive. We believe in parents' rights to decide and support their kids. We believe that kids have the right to learn and the right to succeed.
It consists of 4 factors: freedom to decide, freedom to thrive, freedom to learn, and freedom to succeed. It would allow parents to participate in children's learning, create a safe campus, and offer healthy meals and mental health care. It also guarantees the freedom to learn without political censorship. This comes after Murrieta and Chino Valley school districts voted to notify parents if their child identifies as transgender in school. When Newsom was asked about his stance on the school district's policies, he mostly evaded it, but hinted there could be legislation revolving around it.
We're working with legislative leaders. I'll be meeting with the Speaker and the Pro Tem this evening. We'll be discussing it. I know that the LGBT caucus has got some language they're working on. I haven't had the privilege of looking at it. It's a work in progress.
On the same day, a group of parents and organizations held a press conference at the state capitol to criticize a list of bills that they say infringes on parental rights.
These bills are unconstitutional, illegal, they deprive you of fundamental rights, and they need to be stopped today.
One is AB 1078, where the state would set a school curriculum, regardless if it's age appropriate or fits the local community values, which means if a parent or district finds a book inappropriate, the school cannot remove it because it's material that's inclusive or diverse.
The message was clear. Their goal was to break up the family unit and to take control of our children.
We know what's best for our kids. I'm not going to have a school district or a government agency tell us what they should teach in the schools.
Other bills getting called out are AB 5, which would require school staff to be trained on transitioning students and how to hide their gender identity from parents, and AB 665, which would allow children as young as 12 to consent themselves to mental health treatment. It would allow the minor to leave home and go to government residential shelters without their parents' or guardians' consent for any reason. State lawmakers are set to hear these bills this upcoming legislative session.
Homelessness has seen a record surge, according to the Wall Street Journal. So far in 2023, the count is 11% higher than last year's, and this is considered an undercount. NTD's Faye Quarter has more.
America is currently experiencing a record surge in homelessness. Even a conservative estimate puts the number of homeless at over 577,000 people.
You see it a lot more at red lights, downtowns. I travel a lot. I travel around the country a lot. There's not a downtown that I've been to that you don't see a high homeless population.
Trent Griffin-Broff runs a transportation service that helps the homeless. He says he's definitely seen a spike in the homeless rate.
Even internationally, I recently just got back from Toronto. Same thing.
Griffin-Broff believes it's mainly related to COVID-19. A study by the Wall Street Journal found that key reasons include the COVID lockdowns and all the things associated with it. The end of pandemic spending, the end of eviction moratoriums, inflation, and high housing costs.
If you had a homeless problem, before, you've just multiplied that fourfold
at a minimum. Nellie Vasquez Rowland is the former president of a Safe Haven Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping the homeless. She says the homeless situation was already bad, largely because of mass incarceration. This locked up many people who had issues.
Poverty-related issues, substance abuse issues, mental health issues. And in an effort, to get tough on crime, we created these laws that had the unintentional consequences of really incarcerating people that did not have access to treatment.
If you or someone you know is experiencing homelessness, there may be local emergency shelters that can help. An organization called Feeding America has 60,000 food pantries throughout the United States. They give free food to those in need. And many churches offer emergency shelter services. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
And now for your sports, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a couple of prominent running backs have found new teams. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, listen, Ezekiel Elliott, he's going to the Patriots. He's a 3-time Pro Bowl selection, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, Dalvin Cook just signed with the New York Jets. He's made the last 4 Pro Bowls. Now listen, both these running backs are 28 years old, which is actually not very young in today's NFL. And in a sign of the times for the marketplace for running backs, both had to sign 1-year deals. I think the Dalvin Cook signing is a little bit more significant just because the Jets, their number 1 running back last year, Breece Hall, is recovering from a torn ACL, and that clearly takes some time to recover.
Well, what do you think this does for the Jets in terms of their standing in the AFC?
I don't know that it bridges the gap. Certainly getting Aaron Rodgers brings them much closer to the top of the AFC, with the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills, presumably. I think the offensive line is their key. They've got some question marks. Left tackle, you've got Dwayne Brown, who's been great, but he's 38 years old. You never know what you're going to expect from a player that age. Right tackle is an even bigger question mark. They'd like Mekhi Becton, I'm sure, to grab that right tackle spot. He's a very talented player, but he's missed almost all of the last 2 years. He's only played 1 game the last 2 years because of injuries. I think he's the key to their offensive line and really to their season.
And moving on to college football, defending champion Georgia was number 1 in the preseason poll. How much stock do you put into that?
Very little. No games have been played yet. And Georgia, I don't think they're necessarily wrong about Georgia, but no team has won 3 titles in a row in almost a century. I think the big thing here, though, is seeing Alabama down at number 4. And this is a program that's won 6 of the last 14 national titles. They haven't won it each of the last 2 years, which for them is almost a drought. I think this is really going to motivate Nick Saban. I think he's going to relish the role of the underdog, if you can even call them. I think both them and Georgia are going to have to replace their starting quarterbacks, but I see Alabama getting back to the winner's circle and bringing home the title this year.
Now, were there any surprises in the poll?
Clemson, seeing them at number 9 was a little bit surprising, only because they've been very good under Dabo Swinney, no matter really who they have playing. They've won 2 national titles under them. Oklahoma down at number 20. It's always weird to see them that far down. Granted, they're coming off a losing season and a relatively new head coach. I think this season, though, if you look at the top of the polls, 10 of the top 12 teams are either in the Big Ten or the SEC or will be next year. With this conference realignment, the rich got richer. I think one of the major things that people are going to be talking about this year, too, is kind of the demise of the Pac-12. I think there's going to be a lot of sentiment over that. I think that's going to be a major storyline going forward.
Now, shifting gears to baseball, it appears that Shohei Ohtani will miss his next pitching start. Is he injured?
They're calling it arm fatigue. So I guess he's just tired. That seems to be the presumed rumor about this. But they still have him in the lineup as a hitter, and he's a very good hitter. He's got 41 home runs, which leads all of baseball. But overall, the Angels, they're having some problems. Mike Trout is still out with an injury. He's been out for 6 weeks. He's a 3-time MVP. Meanwhile, they've been losing ground. They're now 7 games out of a playoff spot. With him and Ohtani not injured, things are really looking bleak for them to get back into the race.
Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Steph.
And next, an old military base is getting a makeover in Southern California, making history and turning into one of the nation's largest municipal parks. NTD's Christina Corona showcases its impressive scale.
Irvine's newest park is said to become one of the largest in the United States, boasting expansive grounds and diverse recreational offerings.
The Great Park has a rich history as the former Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, and its 1,300 acres embrace recreation, competitive sports, cultural activities, and the natural environment.
When the base was closing in 1999, what happened was there was a lot of discussions about what that would transform into. And by 2002, on the March ballot was Measure W. And that really meant that we were going to decide whether it was going to be an airport or a park. And the county overwhelmingly voted to have it become a park. And that was the beginning of what is now the Great Park.
After 20 years of effort, Khan said with their increased funding, they now have the opportunity to build the original framework plan with several new amenities.
Right now, the park consists of the sports complex, which has the soccer stadium, the softball stadium, the ice skating rinks. But what we're really excited about is what's coming forward, and that's the botanical garden, the Veterans Memorial Park, the lakes, the meadow, the forest.
And just how long will it take until the new park is completed?
So it's going to be in phases. So the framework plan is looking at from now till about 8 years out. And within those 8 years, right now we're doing demolition and grading.
And are there any plans for preserving the historical significance of the old military base?
Oh, absolutely. As we're involved in demolition right now, we're saving aspects of the old El Toro base. And that's going to be incorporated throughout the park because we want to make sure that as people come in and enjoy the amenity and see what's available for the future, we want to remember our past and our history as well.
Irvine's Great Park will be one of the largest municipal parks in the country. From the botanical garden to the water park to a concert venue, there will be something for everyone to enjoy.
The Irvine Great Park is poised to become one of the world's largest, offering an impressive expanse of recreational and natural space for the community and Southern California to enjoy. Christina Corona, NTD News, Irvine.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. Good night.